Did you know that Atreyu invented metalcore? Neither did I!
That's a good one.
Today we are ranking classic metalcore albums from 1995 to 1999, starting in 1995 with Deadguy with Fixation on a Coworker. Now, some trace the roots of metalcore as far back as 1990 or even the late 80s, but in my opinion, 1995 is where it really starts to take form. Absolute slapper of a debut from a band that quickly hung it up not long after, only to re-emerge 30 years later just this year to put up a follow-up as if they never left, helping to set the tone for not only metalcore but also mathcore while still bringing quite a bit of noise rock influence at the time. There's a reason you still hear so many bands cite this album as an influence to this day. I absolutely love it, and I hope you do too. If you haven't checked it out, please do, but it is going to perfection. Next up is Zao with All Else Failed. Now, I'd argue that this may be the most metalcore sounding album of this year overall. So many killer songs on here packed with riffs and some incredible moments for the bass as well. They even have a very early instance here of what felt like became the obligatory sad acoustic guitar moment in my era. Crazy that they were one of the first bands to set the blueprint and are still putting out some top-notch material to this day, yet get barely any recognition, I feel like. The hardcore fans know, but outside of that circle, sometimes this name is like, who? But anyways, I'm putting this at amazing. Next up is Strongarm with Atonement. I had a few requests to include this Florida band that I was previously not very familiar with, but damn, yeah, these guys are also very much showing a very early understanding of where the genre was headed. Like, if you told me this album came out in like 98 or 99, I would have 100% believed you. For others unfamiliar, I'd definitely draw some comparisons to Shai Hulud in particular, which we will get to. Great mix of hardcore fury and the little melodic guitar hooks, also potentially notable that they repeatedly use the lyric "Every Time I Die" on the song Gates of Atonement. Maybe that has nothing to do with the band, but I am putting this at great tier. We also have Integrity with Systems Overload. Still more of a hardcore album at this point overall, plenty of D-beat alongside some very punk guitar and bass on tracks like No One. Honestly, there isn't very much to separate something like this from the likes of like Bad Brains or Black Flag. I put stuff like this in the more kind of like proto-metalcore category, much like how something like Celtic Frost or Venom is not really black metal, but helped to build a bridge from thrash. Consistently quite fun, just not one of my favorites. I can't stress enough though that really every album on this list is more than worth checking out. It is an ironclad year for the genre. I'm putting this at good. And again, Integrity is one of those big names, so by all means, like, put your own rankings down in the comments. This is just my opinion. It's really just based on my pure enjoyment level of these things. Also, give the video a like if you're enjoying it so far. But moving on, we have Earth Crisis in Destroy the Machines. Now, between these guys and Integrity, I feel like Earth Crisis hit the ground sounding more metal from the start. I feel bands like Hatebreed in particular owe a ton to this album, with Jamie apparently even citing this album in the past. It's like the perfect melding of hardcore energy with a thrashier sounding guitar tone and riffing. Very important album, and even kind of iconic album cover too. Still not one of my top favorites personally, which again might make some people mad, but I am going to put this at amazing. It is an excellent album. All right, moving on to 1996, we have Converge with Petitioning the Empty Sky. Not their first album, as they had already dropped Halo in a Haystack in 1994, which the band has since sort of relegated to more of a demo at this point, with a lot of those songs being re-released in other compilations and whatnot. But I'd argue that this is where one of my all-time favorite bands first really kicked into gear. Big step up in tightening the songwriting and getting quite heavy, almost grindy at times. Love him or hate him too, no one else has vocals quite like Jacob Bannon. I'd love to hear from y'all in the comments too, what you think of his dying bird vocals.
That is a northern Potu.
I
It sounds like it.
Almost exactly.
Also, one of the best openers on this list in The Saddest Day, more slappers in Forsaken, Albatross, and Color Me Black and White. Another case of not my favorite from the band, but definitely a major standout here and ahead of its time. If imperfect in its final third, I'm going to put this at fantastic. We have another Earth Crisis with Gomorrah's Season Ends. Now, as awesome as the last album was, big step up in both production and overall sound, if you ask me. Very aggressive with even heavier riffs, guitar tone, and drumming. Weirdly feeling a little Celtic Frost at times. And honestly, impressive just what they do in terms of musicianship and overall songwriting for that time. Killer bass, too, on the title track, as well as the more noise-influenced Morality Dictates. I am also putting this one at amazing, maybe slightly higher. Then there's Integrity with Humanity is the Devil. This album feels more like the turning point where they went from more traditional hardcore to metal. Riffs are slower and heavier, and the atmosphere feels much darker. Some experimental elements here too. Cool evolution, still not among my favorites. I am going to put this one at great tier. We also have Vision of Disorder with Vision of Disorder. A little embarrassed to say that growing up, I knew these guys more as a new metal band than a metalcore one, based on From Bliss to Devastation being my introduction. They are kind of interesting in that this first album almost sounds like Tool when it starts, and some of the vocals even remind me of like The Offspring of all things. But in between, there's no denying the metalcore elements, but yeah, those cleans are kind of a real hard sell for me on this album. So this may be a real hot take. I'm just putting it at okay. There's going to be some other hot takes to come here too.
It was inevitable.
All right, we are now in 1997, starting with Coalesce with Give Them Rope. Now, of all the bands here that I was very aware of in high school, Coalesce was the one that for some reason I just never really took the dive with, and checking out these albums now, I am still just not that into them. Yeah, another potentially hot take here, because I saw some people in the lead up to this video really saying like, yeah, Coalesce. The guitar work and drumming is very impressive, but the songwriting could be better, and I especially just, again, don't care for the vocals. I don't have as much of an issue with them as I do with Vision of Disorder, but it's just very like squelchy, strained, just like, I don't know, it just grates on my ears over time. So yeah, this also went to okay, but again, just my opinion. You can rank them wherever you want to, and we can be bros about it. Moving on, we have Integrity with Seasons in the Size of Days. Continuing basically right where the last one left off, at this point this feels very much more sonically aligned with the sound I associate with the genre, but still detours plenty into those clear hardcore roots. Another sad acoustic moment and some piano too. Definitely my personal favorite of the three from the 90s, though I feel like Ringworm eventually beats them at this sound. And if y'all enjoy this video, and whether I continue into 2000 and beyond is going to be very much based on that, but I would love to be able to talk some Ringworm on those, but this is going to amazing.
That's Integrity.
Zao back again with the Splinter Shards, The Birth of Separation.
Look out! Don't strike the blood! Over and over again!
My thoughts on this album have drastically changed since I first heard it in that same record store where I discovered The Silent Circus. For some reason, I just wasn't ready for it at the time. It just kind of sounded like loud and too noisy for me, I guess, which is weird because I loved The Silent Circus. But there are still albums I like in their discography more, but this one is a banger. Once more representing a truly full-blooded metalcore sound, breakdowns, spoken word moments, and all. Jesse really killing it on the drums here too. I almost put this at perfection, but I'm going to put it just under at fantastic. And we also have Strongarm with The Advent of a Miracle. Sounding a bit heavier and more pissed off going into this one. Less melody, more dissonance, and what melody is used often sounds much more morose. I'd still rank it about the same though in terms of my overall enjoyment. I'm putting it at great tier. To be fair, I've spent a lot less time listening to these than I have some of the absolute classics and favorites here, so that could change with time. That's always the case. Really, I just use this as a framing device, as an excuse to share out and encourage people to listen to new albums and also find some new ones for myself. Speaking of which, we have Kiss It Goodbye with She Loves Me, She Loves Me Not. I was not familiar with this album either, actually, but I'm looking forward to checking out some one-and-done releases on these lists that I haven't before. A particularly dark and dreary release that gets heavy but also kind of sludgy and noisy with some comparisons to Deadguy at times. I do think that it drags a bit and gets repetitious in places, but when it hits, it really hits. I'm going to put it at good tier. And there's Living Sacrifice with Reborn. I actually consider these guys to be more of a groove metal band than a metalcore one, but they kept coming up on the list, and I won't argue that at bare minimum, this album feels like it fits. Headbang City, great atmosphere and rhythm, although it's no The Hammering Process.
I'll tell you when you're older.
It maybe overstays its welcome by a few minutes, and in this case, the acoustic elements seem a bit disconnected from everything else, but very solid record. Nonetheless, I am putting this at amazing. And I'm actually already going to start kind of making a little space so we can see everything here. Next up is Aftershock with Letters. This is what Adam D was up to before Killswitch Engage, and you can definitely hear that DNA in the riffs, also played by Jonathan Deneas of Shadows Fall. The songs go super hard, and Adam's brother is vicious on vocals. Kind of surprised he hasn't done much else from what I could see. There are some kind of chuckle-worthy pseudo-rapping moments, but those are pretty few and far between, fortunately. I'm going to put this at great tier. Then speaking of Shai Hulud, we have Shai Hulud with Hearts Once Nourished with Hope and Compassion. I was kind of obsessed with this album when I first discovered it, and also nerded out over the Dune reference in their name before that was as popular as it is now. Also enjoyed telling people that Chad Gilbert, who would go on to co-found Newfound Glory, provides vocals on this album. And it had actually been a while since I listened to it, but damned if I didn't find myself grinning so hard while mouthing every lyric to the opening of solely concentrating on the negative aspects of life. They were still hiding out in the back of my brain somewhere. I still have some criticisms even from back then about the pacing of this album, but it's another one that has some very impactful moments that keep me coming back. I am putting it at fantastic, and I was also kicking myself remembering that I traded this and the next album for other stuff back in the day. I had both of those CDs, and they are long since gone. Maybe I'll find them again. Moving on to Disembodied with Diablerie. Another group I was not familiar with and dropped only 2 full lengths, including this debut. And another album that's just a really solid slice of 90s metalcore goodness with plenty of intensity, some great dynamics and pace changes. That said, on this list, the songwriting just doesn't quite hit the same for me as some of the others here, but again, I can't stress enough, though, that really every album on this list is more than worth checking out, and this one gives you a lot for a little investment at just 27 minutes. I am putting it at good tier. Then we have Snapcase with Progression Through Unlearning. Really fun album that consistently gets my head banging. It's like Helmet and Jane's Addiction went hardcore. The drumming in particular is a highlight, but across the board, really sick, and Zombie Prescription is a slapper. Like, holy shit, what a track. Very nearly top tier for me. I'm putting it at fantastic. We also have Will Haven with El Diablo. A really kick-ass debut packed with groove from the Sacramento band with ties to Deftones, but I also hear plenty of Helmet, again, in their DNA. And really, in general, even in terms of shows, they had more crossover with the new metal crowd, but their sound is still unmistakably early metalcore. Love the groove and that super tight snare tone. Great dark atmosphere, too. I am putting this at great tier. We also have Shadows Fall with Somber Eyes to the Sky. Now, hopefully the new album drops soon enough so I can really share my love for this band's albums, but personally, I don't really love this one like some people do.
Why are you doing this to us?
The guitar work is excellent, really setting the stage for the more melodic riffing style that became the popular approach of the 2000s, but the songwriting leaves something to be desired, and the vocals aren't always great despite being provided here by Phil Labonte, whose work I really enjoy on early All That Remains. I am putting this at good tier. Again, if people love this video and it does well, then I will continue on into the 2000s.
The power is yours!
Next up, we have Hatebreed with Satisfaction is the Death of Desire.
You come to me with salvation, saying I must repent.
What an incredible way to kick off this album with the guitars and drums of Empty Promises. Again, taking a lot of similar ideas from Earth Crisis, but giving it stronger production and arguably tightening some things up for an incredibly concise 25 minutes. Once more, love that punchy snare tone. The whole thing is great, but I'm partial to Afflicted Past, and mark my words, this is going to perfection. Alright, we made it to 1998, starting again with Zao, with Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest. Now, I'd argue that this is where Zao really started to come into their own and experiment a lot more with the dynamics and texturing of their sound, and now with longtime vocalist Daniel Wyant stepping in with his fairly unique snarl. I'd compare it a lot more to the direction that Living Sacrifice went with almost tribal drumming and groovier guitars, making for what I'd argue is a more interesting listen. Great all-around experience front to back, but also some real standouts like Ember, one of my favorite cover arts here as well. I am putting it at perfection. Then we have Earth Crisis back again with Breed the Killers. I'm not exactly sure what happened with this one, as it feels like several steps back from the last two. The songwriting is less interesting, the production is worse, the vocals in particular just sound kind of weird to me. Again, not a bad album, some solid riffs in there, but by comparison, it just falls short for them on this list. I'm putting it at okay. I think I'm most interested to hear people's thoughts on the albums that I'm putting in the okay tier. We also have Blood Has Been Shed with I Dwell on These Thoughts of You. Another proto-Killswitch Engage group with future vocalist Howard Jones. Love that epic operatic intro. Definitely something a little different. Sounds like I'm about to listen to like Septic Flesh instead of a metalcore album. They also throw in some pretty atypical approach to the clean vocals on this one, but I don't think it really ends up working, at least for me. The songwriting also feels a little lackluster. I prefer their later stuff. Really sick breakdown on Willful Ignorance, though. That is probably my favorite moment on the album. But this is also going to okay tier. Again, let me know what you think about that.
That's racism.
Ooh, but then we have Botch with American Nervoso. A name I have written into more FFO lists over the years than I can count, and one that every mathcore fan out there should know. Right from this first LP, they had the deliciously off-kilter approach to riffing, and man, is it just a blast to break your neck to as a result. The only thing it has going against it is that it's not We Are the Romans, but we will get to that in due time. But yeah, this is going to fantastic. Move this over a little bit more. Alright, next up is Mourning Again with As Tradition Dies Slowly. Another band I wasn't too familiar with putting this list together, and I'm not sure if I'll get grief for that, as I saw some list them alongside Integrity and Converge. Personally though, I can see why this isn't mentioned as much as the bigger names here. Solid album, but nothing I don't hear from other records in this time frame doing better. But there are some sick moments like Civil Hands, kind of feels like the precursor to Opposite of December, but that album bodies this one, and again, we will get to that when we get to it, but this is going to good tier. Another one from Coalesce. We have Functioning on Impatience.
You can't kill us all.
Similar thoughts on this one as the last one. That super strained vocal style just really grates on me. Again, musically, I like the chaotic, mathy vibes, but it just doesn't quite come together for me in the same way as the albums that keep me coming back. Another very low investment listen, though, at just around 20 minutes, and maybe over time, I'll feel differently, but for now, it's also okay. Then we have Cave In with Until Your Heart Stops. This band has gone through quite an evolution while continuously having something interesting to offer. I'd argue that this debut plays on some similar ideas as Converge while also setting the stage for Every Time I Die. Stephen Brodsky very much proving what a talented guy he is long before founding even more great projects like Mutoid Man and also playing in the most recent Converge Blood Moon collabs. I am putting this at fantastic. Alright, Vision of Disorder with Imprint. Now, I really wanted to like this one more than the last one, as the instrumentation is kind of a mix of Botch and Cave In, but the clean vocals just still keep me very much at arm's length. This one definitely has its moments though, especially the title track Colorblind and By the River, which features Phil Anselmo, but overall,
it's not my thing. It's not my thing.
That said, it made Billboard Heatseekers at number 10, and I even read on Wikipedia, and I quote, "Retrospectively, Imprint is viewed as one of metalcore's greatest and most influential albums." There's no citation, but hey, maybe it's just me. I'm sure you all will let me know in the comments. But yeah, for me, I just put it at good tier. But then speaking of Converge, they are back here with When Forever Comes Crashing. Another incredible opening track in a career full of them. Year of the Swine and Letterbomb are also sick. This takes everything that was already great about the last one, but perfects that formula while also experimenting more on tracks like The Lowest Common Denominator. And still just the early phase of one of the most consistent discographies in the genre, if you ask me, definitely setting the stage for the next album too. Maybe we'll get to that. You decide. But yeah, I am putting this at perfection, and it's another one of my favorite album arts, the reissue version anyways, on this list. All right, 1999, we have God Forbid with Reject the Sickness. The debut from this New Jersey band that I personally got into with 2004's Gone Forever. This album is definitely a bit more rough around the edges, but what it lacks in some polish, it makes up for in sheer violence and also a surprising number of wicked mathcore moments with some crazy noodly guitars and panic chords. I honestly wish there was more of that in their later material, but if you want to hear something more in line with their later melodic directions, there's also plenty of that on here later on in the album. I'm putting this one at fantastic. And yeah, for visibility's sake, moving this over a bit more again. Don't worry, at the end I will show the whole thing. But next up is Integrity with Integrity 2000.
Look how they massacred my boy.
It took me a minute to even find this album to listen to it because I feel like people have been trying to like scrub it from existence. And given my experience with it and most of the fan reviews, I can kind of see why that's the case. Major step back from the previous albums, but it's not as terrible as some might tell you. I can appreciate how heavy, thrashy, and at times even downright industrial some of the instrumentation is, but it gets pretty repetitive and the vocals are just bad. I think I heard there's like a Mushroom Head collab on here too. Probably listen to something like Prong instead of this, but yeah, give it at least one spin just for the experience. It is going to okay. If I had a bad tier, this is probably the album that would go there. Next up we have Zeo, again, with
Liberate Te Ex Inferis.
a seminal album for the band, an absolute classic for the genre, continuing to lean into the more atmospheric elements of the previous album, even more so this time, and continuing to step up their game on a compositional level. Favorite tracks, Autopsy, Ghost Psalm, Dark Cold Sound, and Skin Like Winter, but it's just a great front-to-back experience. Is going to perfection. Another very, iconic 90s metalcore cover, too. And we have Disembodied with Heretic.
That's some heavy shit, Doc.
They really double down on the heaviness with this one. I saw a comment that best summed it up. Producer, how many breakdowns do you want? Disembodied. Yes. Reaching Norma Jean levels here. Total banger. Those panic chords. God damn. Wish I had known about this one back then, but walking away with another killer album I previously overlooked, I am definitely adding this to my collection. It is going to fantastic, and with time I could see it even rising to perfection. Alright, there's Coalesce with 012 Revolution in Just Listening. Interesting album to listen to and analyze, as this was actually recorded out of obligation for their record contract after the band had already broken up. Sounds like a horrific circumstance to record music under. It's like still having to work with your ex. And yet, in spite of that, I actually think that this is a much stronger album than the last two. Very engaging, more memorable. I love the song titles too. I'm actually putting this one at great tier, and again, let me know in the comments, am I right or wrong for that? Alright, also Will Haven with WHVN. I'm kind of sneaking this one in here, as they were arguably leaning more into sludge and noise by this point, but I spent quite a bit of time listening to this album and the next one back in the day. Love the dark atmosphere and kind of hypnotic qualities of the guitars. Some serious headbangers here like Fresno, If She Could Speak, and Dallas Drake. I am going to put this one at amazing. We also have Prayer for Cleansing with Rain and Endless Fall. Getting a little very early As I Lay Dying with a few Avenged Sevenfold riffs mixed in on this one, again before either had released an album. I don't find the songwriting as memorable as either band. It kind of like hurts this in terms of maybe if I had heard this first, I'd like it more, but since I've spent so much time with those albums, it just doesn't hit as hard for me. But it's still a killer listen and cool again to hear that groundwork being laid. I also saw plenty of people in the comments raving about this one, so you may rank it higher. I put it at good tier. Again, I haven't spun it as many times as some of these other ones, though. Especially not albums like The Dillinger Escape Plan with Calculating Infinity. Somehow, I almost forgot to include this one, despite it being one of the first albums I thought of when I started the list. It's like it magically disappeared from the spreadsheet that I put together. Anyways, yeah, mathcore may have had some foundations laid in the years leading up to this one, but man, did this 100% set the tone for the genre to this very day. This is the album. I get some sour comments when I say it's not among my favorite albums from the band, but considering I think that all of their albums are at least like a 9 out of 10, it's all relative. As far as this decade goes, of course, though, it tops the list and is probably my second favorite overall. Perfection. Then there's Throwdown with Beyond Repair. I was very aware of this band in high school too, but for some reason just never really got into them. They still carry forward a lot of the classic hardcore punk energy in the music, but very much with a metal edge like razor blades. Very harsh vocals, pretty grimy production, and the guitar tone too, which ends up really adding to the overall intensity. I saw some lower ratings for this on Metal Storm, but I think it's a blast. I think it belongs at least at great tier. Another one from Aftershock with Through the Looking Glass. Fellow Killswitch Engaged guitarist Joel Strotzel also joining on rhythm here, as well as brief KSE drummer Tom Gomes. And man, is this a jump in terms of the guitar work, while also really toying with some pretty grand atmospheric sections as well. I think it's maybe a little over-ambitious in stretching the runtime at times, but it's a good one. I'm gonna put it at great tier. Then there's Underoath with Active Depression. Now, as I said in my Underoath tier list I did recently, despite being a big fan of this band in general, I sadly find this album to be almost unlistenable. Plenty of needlessly overlong, messy, meandering songs that feel very thrown together. The one plus I will give it is the drumming and that dodgeball snare tone. Beyond that, I just don't really enjoy going back to this one, so it's going to... Okay, like everything on here, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. We also have Himzo with Groundbreaking Ceremony. These guys have such an interesting kind of off-kilter swagger to them that again feels sort of pre-Every Time I Die, but they also have their own unique turns into noise, post-hardcore, and other influences. Far from perfect, but really unique. If you also enjoy this album, go rate it on Metal Storm, because as I write this, it has a pathetic 4.6 fan rating. It's also their only album with Christian Schmidt on vocals. I am putting it at amazing. Then we have Botch with We Are the Romans. Another benchmark record. Seriously, 99 is insane with those. I have jammed this album so many times, and it was a major eye-opening one for me when I finally discovered it. Takes the formula of American Nervoso and completely perfects that formula with bangers like To Our Friends in the Great White North, transitions from persona to object, C. Thomas Howell in The Soul Man, St. Matthew Returns to the Womb, and Frequency Ass Bandit. Needless to say, this one is also going to perfection. Then we have Caliban with A Small Boy and a Gray Heaven. Now, I'm focusing on American bands with this list because, frankly, adding all of Europe to this would have made it just a completely overwhelming task. But I will include this German band as they were still pretty popular overseas. I haven't been too impressed with their newer stuff, but the old stuff is pretty vicious. Definitely some similarities to Poison the Well, especially tracks like Intolerance, but not quite on the same level for me. The clean vocals can be pretty bad here at times too, but everything else hits hard, and I like the little additions of strings. I want to put this one also at great tier. Then we have This Day Forward with Fragments of an Untold Story, born by shunning the opportunity. Another pretty mathcore coded album with a lot of purposefully disjointed riffing and panic chords. Apparently back then they were compared a lot to Converge, and I can definitely hear that, but it's not nearly as infectious, though to be fair, again, I've been listening to those Converge albums for like 25 years. Notably, two members here would go on to form Circa Survive, and Vadim Taver has also played with A Life Once Lost and Poison the Well. I am putting this one at good tier. I also want to note that there are plenty of other little like one-off or kind of sort of lesser known albums that I could have included on here, but at some point I had to cut it down to what I did. Alright, then we have Hopesfall with Frailty of Words. Everyone talks about the satellite years, but I rarely hear anyone talk about this debut, which is a tragedy because on certain days, it's my favorite from them. Another killer opener with the bass going into that stank face riff on Shines Through, and that's just one of many bangers like Endeavor and From Your Hands. The clean vocals leave something to be desired, but in this case, I think it kind of adds to the overall unique charm. They're not like bad. I'm gonna put this at amazing. Then we have Vision of Disorder with For the Bleeders. This is apparently largely made up of re-recorded songs from the 90s, but it's still considered a formal LP, and it's still just not really doing it for me. The drumming is crazy, though, on tracks like Watch Out. This is also going to... okay. Alright, but that out of the way, my favorite metalcore album probably of the entire 90s, Poison the Well with Opposite of December. Just a perfect front-to-back metalcore album that is young and angsty, but very genuine and still holds up so great. They're another band that comes up way less in the conversation than they should, because they are another one with a flawless discography, and I can't wait to hear the new one after so many years away. Every song rips, but special mentions to My Mirror No Longer Reflects, and of course, Nerdy. You know it. It is going to perfection. And here's the entire thing together. Alright, y'all, check out this playlist for more metalcore rankings, including several discography rankings of bands from this list, or this for your personal YouTube recommendation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.